In this video, I'm going to tell you why I think MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, is soon going to $1,200 per share. I'll give out the very basic case as to why, and why specifically what Michael Saylor has announced just a couple days ago is a really, really big deal, and exactly what I wanted to see at exactly the right time. So I'm still here in Costa Rica at the Bitcoin Jungle Conference, a wonderful place, beautiful, amazing place, beautiful creatures. And nature's pretty binary. Something is either alive or not alive, right? And likewise, Bitcoin is pretty binary. Either this thing is worthless, it's just a magic internet money scheme made by some anonymous person that's eventually going to zero because it has no intrinsic value, so it's a zero, or it's a one, and actually, it is a monetary singularity. It's going to absorb the premium of all monetary assets in the world, and it's probably going to last 1,000 years, right? Many things in life are binary like that. And I believe Michael Saylor, likewise, is one of those two things. I think Michael Saylor's, let's say, legacy into history is going to be either a 1 or 0. I think either he's going to be remembered as basically the biggest financial genius of all time, or he's going to be remembered as a guy that blew up the entire company and had one of the biggest laughing stocks in history until eventually he's forgotten into irrelevance. And that's really important. I'll get back to that in just a moment. Why am I talking in such binary, deterministic ways? It's because a lot of people right now view MicroStrategy stock as being pretty boring. They think, oh, well, MicroStrategy has not been lacking this kind of volatility in a very long time. Oh, MicroStrategy was $540 back in November. Now in February, it's barely hanging on to 320. What is going on? Michael Saylor's bought all this Bitcoin. The premium is collapsing, blah, blah, blah. But I would encourage you to zoom out, touch some grass, live some life, get your head out of a screen all the time, and realize Michael Saylor is either a genius or he's an idiot. It's one of the two. And if he's a genius, if I believe that, which maybe you watching don't believe that, but if one is to believe he's a genius, who on earth has a larger incentive to pump his own stock price more than Michael Saylor? Michael knows the game. He needs volatility to the upside and to the downside. But, of course, he especially wants to the upside. A lot of people out there, especially on Twitter and Reddit and YouTube comments, have been saying, Michael Saylor doesn't know what he's doing because he has too much at the money, blah, 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 too much stock issuance, too many shares, oh, blah, blah, he's buying Bitcoin too fast. A lot of the, people with, less than $1 billion in net worth are complaining. But, and of course he could be wrong, but I think if we're going to go on a limb here and say, maybe he's a genius, maybe he's the multi-billionaire in the room, I think one could say, probably Michael Saylor has a decent incentive to have a long-term plan of pumping his own share price, right? My point in all this is that for a lot of you out there that are holding MicroStrategy shares that feel like that it's not pumping enough or it's not being exciting enough, just keep in mind, first principles analysis, what's going on here. You have arguably one of the greatest financial engineers of the 21st century whose main goal this year is to pump his share price as much as possible. He needs that volatility because that is how he has the option markets thrive. That's how he keeps demand up for his shares, right? That's his whole branding. He has staked his whole reputation into over the last 4 years, not just Bitcoin, but MicroStrategy's basically levered Bitcoin, what's better than Bitcoin, more Bitcoin, blah, 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 all the little sayings he's had. He's made it very clear what he wants to do is pump the share price in the long term. And if you think that he's not doing that or he's making a mistake or blah, 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 whatever, it's important to keep in mind how much of the company he actually owns. You own 50 grand or 500 grand or 5 million in MicroStrategy shares. He's got billions of dollars on the line. I think he's got a pretty big incentive to put in the work and actually pump his share price. So with all that said, what am I really excited about that came across very recently here? Michael Saylor announced on February 18th that MicroStrategy, MSTR, now branded as Strategy, is announcing the proposed private offering of $2 billion of convertible senior notes. What does that mean? Since November, or really since October, what Michael has been doing has been having all this at-the-money issuance, right? Basically, there are two ways in which he can acquire more Bitcoin, which is what he wants. One way is by printing money, essentially, printing his own corporate paper, printing shares, and buying Bitcoin. The other way is indirectly printing money by borrowing dollars into existence, offering these notes, and buying the Bitcoin with debt. Those are the two primary ways to do it. In his big plan, the $42 billion plan that was unveiled at the quarterly report after this most recent one, the one in late last year, he made it very clear that 21 billion is going to be the convertible notes, 21 billion is going to be the at-the-money issuance, more or less. I'm oversimplifying there, but the point is, he has really rammed through hard the at-the-money issuance. He has been forcing the stock price down as much as possible since November, because you need some downside volatility time to time. November, there was a lot of excitement. I remember being excited myself when it was going from 400, 450, 480, 500, 520, 530. It just kept going up. And Michael printed and diluted his own shares into that strength to cause this weakness that now everybody's bored about. But he is pivoting exactly like he has been indicating that he would. MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, is planning to pivot more back towards the raising of new capital and debt to acquire more Bitcoin and toning down the at-the-money issuance. So what does all that mean? That means they're buying more Bitcoin. They're not going to be diluting as many shares to do it, right? So right now, the share price for MicroStrategy is about $320, more or less. Obviously, some people are going to comment down below and say, this video is outdated. Well, yeah, okay. It could be $350 tomorrow. It can be $290. Okay, I don't know. But at the time of recording, it's about $320 per share. Let's say theoretically they were to increase the number of Bitcoin they have by 25%, get over half a Nakamoto, get over 500,000 Bitcoin. Okay, I think that is a speculation, but it's pretty reasonable. Let's say that the company increases their premium by 50%. I think that is exceedingly reasonable. Okay, let's take another Bitcoin company out there, MetaPlanet, over in Japan. Their premium against their Bitcoin holdings is closer to 8 to 10x. MicroStrategy is closer to 2x. Is it possible that MicroStrategy has a 4x, 5x, maybe even a 6x premium against their Bitcoin at some point in some sort of hype, FOMO, gamma squeeze, whatever, mega black swan in our favorite event? Yeah, I think that's possible. I like to be a little more conservative in a specific time horizon. Obviously, I think in the long term, MicroStrategy is going to tens of thousands of dollars per share. But if we're talking about this year, in the short time horizon of this year, which is what most of you care about, I think it's pretty reasonable to speculate that the premium is going to rise by 50% up to about 3. Now, likewise, Bitcoin price in nominal terms, in dollar terms, is going to rise too, in my opinion. I think we're going up. I think it is so bullish that Bitcoin has been consolidating between $90,000 to $110,000 for like 3 months now. I mean, I know we haven't had an all-time high in about a month, but that should be really optimistic, right? Bitcoin for the last basically 2-3 years now has done nothing but go flat, vertical, flat, vertical. It's very different than previous bull markets, and it's exactly why I think that the altcoin casino is going to collapse in the next couple of years. Nobody's going to want your stupid Solana memes or your Binance memes or whatever they are when Bitcoin is starting to begin to break the 4-year cycle. I think we will have bear markets again, but even with a less devastating bear market of 40, 50, 60%, that's going to crush the memes, I think, because I think we're just going to have a longer extended cycle. I think the days of an 80% drawdown are becoming less likely. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, because that's not a horse I want to die on, but I think the probability of the upcoming bear market being different than previous ones has a decent amount of credence to it. But besides the rambling, the point is, I think if we're being conservative, we assume Bitcoin continues holding this line of $90,000 to $100,000, maybe for a few more months. Maybe we have a couple more months of intense boredom. The market's flat. We haven't really had a big money printing event yet. Then maybe late this spring and summer sometime, Bitcoin suddenly doubles up to 180 grand. That'd be about a doubling from today at about $90,000 a coin. And so what would that mean for MicroStrategy? That would mean if we have an increase of the Bitcoin holdings of about 25%, if we assume the company's premium against that increases by 50%, and we assume the price of Bitcoin about doubles, we're looking at a share price comfortably over $1,000 per share. That means that if Bitcoin doubles, that MicroStrategy is probably going to more than double with that. It's important to keep in mind that everything is a trade-off, And I'm not saying that doesn't have risk. There is way more risk with MicroStrategy than with Bitcoin. Okay, you don't get to be arrogant or maybe naive enough to say, oh, I think MicroStrategy is going to do a 3 or 4x if Bitcoin does a 2x, without also inherently admitting and explicitly stating that means we're going to have more downside in the future eventually, right? It's not, it has to come back down to reality at some point. But when there's a massive raging bull market, and when people are excited, and when people are FOMOing about Bitcoin, and when the unit bias is smaller for MicroStrategy, when the altcoins are dying, like the whole reason people go to the altcoins is to make more money on their Bitcoin, right? Like what happens when people, all the degens in all the crypto land, use their 14 brain cells they have and realize, wait a minute, I don't actually care what I'm buying. I'm just deluding myself into different narratives about different altcoins. Like my whole goal was to make more money, have larger returns than what Bitcoin could provide me. Why am I still in these altcoins when you have MicroStrategy or now Fold? Fold just had their IPO. Congratulations to Fold and to Matt and everyone else there, right? Congratulations to them, or Will. Congratulations to them. I mean, when you have the MicroStrategies and the MetaPlanets and the Folds, when you have dozens of companies out there outperforming Bitcoin because they're actually stacking underlying Bitcoin, all these altcoin degens are going to realize, what on earth am I doing? Like, most of the people still holding Solana or Binance Coin or Ethereum or whatever, and I talk to a lot of people that are still holding those things, even though they're Bitcoin maxis, again and again and again. I ask them, why are you holding? All of them say the same thing. I'm going to hold it and then dump it when it gets high enough. Like, don't you understand that you're playing a zero-sum game and inherently most of you are going to lose that game? I think my point in all this is that a lot of people are going to comment and say $1,200 is not that bullish. I agree with you. The crypto market cap is $1 trillion. Like MicroStrategy, I think is going to outperform Bitcoin because it's going to get so disconnected with reality. Why? Because there's $1 trillion of disconnect from reality in the crypto casino, and a large portion of that is probably going to come to the Bitcoin stocks. Which one's going to be the biggest one? MicroStrategy, right? And so I think we're going to have a massive amount of delusion and FOMO and hype around this stock as the cycle crescendos. And I think it is going to be really painful for the Bitcoiners that have FOMO about MicroStrategy. I think it's going to be really painful, especially for the altcoin degens that are still holding on to their altcoin bags, hoping we get one last pump. But then ultimately the stocks become the new altcoins. I think that's the direction we're heading. And I think that maybe, even more than anything I've said already, is the biggest catalyst to where not only could we be looking at $1,000 per share, maybe even $2,000 a share, but I think that's where things get just stupid silly, is when people stop going to these alts and they just go to the stocks instead. So, but ultimately, none of this matters. None of it at all. Because your time horizon, if you're an actual Bitcoiner, should be longer than just this year, right? If you're actually in this for the long term, for your kids and for your grandkids, you actually should be thinking longer than just a year, right? So even if MicroStrategy doesn't hit $1,200, $2,400, $3,600 this year, it will soon enough, right? Like it's going to hit it sooner or later, right? Like maybe not this year, but at some point it's going to hit that. Why? Because Michael Saylor is either a 0 or a 1. He's either a complete idiot or he's a genius. And if he's a genius, we got to keep it super simple. What does the genius say, right? This is a meme in the form of a question I was asked based upon this post I had, right? Of explain it to me like I'm 5, right? Let's see if I can get to play here. Right, the Steve Carell office meme, very funny. But let's take the Michael Saylor quote. The only use of time is, how do I buy more Bitcoin, right? Take all your money and buy Bitcoin. Then take all your time, figure out how to borrow more money and buy more Bitcoin. Then take all your time and figure out what you can sell to buy Bitcoin. And if you absolutely love the thing, go mortgage your house to buy Bitcoin, right? Convert the proceeds into Bitcoin, right? Michael Saylor is obsessed with that. And your time horizon, your real question should not be, Luke, what do you think MicroStrategy is going to hit next month? What do you think it's going to hit next year? I think it could hit $1,200 easily in the course of the next few months. I think it can go way beyond that over the course of this next year. I think eventually it's going to tens of thousands of dollars per share for the current number of shares outstanding, right? For the current, stock split, right? Obviously, they're going to split the stock. It's never going to actually hit that. They'll keep splitting and splitting. But in today's dollars, in today's shares, I think we're going to tens of thousands of dollars per share. because I think we're going to tens of millions of dollars per coin. At that point, one share is going to be worth way more than just $10,000. So all that to say is that, sure, it's fun to speculate about, is MicroStrategy going to hit 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 this year? But your real-time horizon should be over the course of the decade, and understand that it won't matter if it hit 1,000 or 3,000 this year, like, because it's going to 50,000, right? Like, you should have a longer-term time horizon. However, because we have a longer-term time horizon, we have to keep in mind, MicroStrategy is a trade. It is not a hodl like Bitcoin. I'm a happy MicroStrategy shareholder. I've been buying since it was, $30-40. I'm very happy with that. Obviously, it's done very well. I've made money on my Bitcoin. Sure, all that's great. I think that's wonderful. I've never sold the MicroStrategy I own. I'm very consistent about that. However, I'm also very consistent in reminding you, MicroStrategy is not Bitcoin. When I'm encouraging people to get off zero when it comes to your Bitcoin. If you have less than half of Bitcoin, don't even think about buying a single MicroStrategy share. You must obsess on getting to your stacking goal, whatever that is. Half a Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin, 10 Bitcoin, 80 Bitcoin, 122 Bitcoin, whatever your number is, get to that goal first. Don't gamble in MicroStrategy stock, MetaPlanet stock, Fold stock, whatever stock. Don't gamble in those things, because they're the new altcoins. And they will dramatically underperform in a bear market. And the odds that everything goes right perfectly the first time is very, very low. I think many exchanges will blow up in the next decade. I think many Bitcoin companies will have a hard time in the coming years, in the coming decades or so, right? And if you inherently believe MicroStrategy is going to outperform on the upside, it is going to underperform on the downside. I do believe we could break the 4-year cycle. I do believe we could only maybe have a 40 to 60% bear market, depending how high Bitcoin goes this year, right? Like, I think this time could be different. We will have downside, make no mistake, but I don't think we're going to go an 80% drawdown 2 or 3 years from now. I don't think we're going to do that. Maybe that opinion will change, but assuming we're an optimist, and assuming this time is different, which is dangerous to say, even assuming it's different, and Bitcoin only has a 50% bear market, don't you understand that MicroStrategy is going to have an 80 or 90% drawdown, right? My point is that if you're somebody that's newer to Bitcoin, that, you're not really you're just trying to get your bearings of everything, ignore all this MicroStrategy talk. Focus on Bitcoin, focus on self-custody. Remember, at the end of the day, MicroStrategy is a trade. Fold stock, MetaPlanet stock, Similar Scientific, whatever. It's all a trade. Bitcoin is the money for your great-grandkids. Sailor coin is not the money for your great-grandkids, right? Fold is not the money for your kids, right? Bitcoin is the money for your intergenerational hold, okay? You're going to be able to borrow against your Bitcoin at way better interest rates than you will be against your shares, right? Like, there is so much coming to the Bitcoin economy. And 5 years from now, you're going to have so much more optionality, upside for the products available to you with your Bitcoin than with security. Why? Because the securities have higher risk, both in terms of price and in terms of their fundamental risk, right? On a risk-adjusted basis, I'm going to make this very clear. On a risk-adjusted basis, I think it's fine, or at least tolerable, for maybe months or a year or two to be gambling, or probably a better word is speculating, on your favorite Bitcoin stock. Mine, personally, is MicroStrategy. But on a risk-adjusted basis, over the course of years and decades and generations, that risk is not compatible with what your long-term goals should be. You should maybe tolerate a small percentage allocation to the Bitcoin securities if you've already reached a Bitcoin stacking goal that you're comfortable with. If you have a very large percentage of your Bitcoin portfolio in a security like that, I think that is a lot of risk that you are not going to be happy stomaching over the course of the next 5 years. Maybe for the next 5 months it'll work out, but you got to really keep that in mind, that this is a trade. This is not a hodl like Bitcoin. And so if you're somebody who wants to have those kinds of conversations, I think about what to do, what's the best way to navigate all this. I think the best way to have it is in person. So bear with me for just a moment here. I want to give a shout out to my fellow Michiganders, people in the Midwest, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, but especially people in Michigan. There are 2 awesome events coming up. If you want to have Bitcoin conversations in person, there is one coming up on February 27th, and there's one coming up on March 1st, right? If you want to go to a Bitcoin event, meet people in Bitcoin, have these conversations about Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, life and living life, retiring on Bitcoin, whatever you want to talk about, highly encourage you consider going to one of these 2 events coming up here in late February and early March of 2025. There's a Bitcoin and Bullets if you want to shoot some guns and talk about sovereign money, right? And then there's another one called the Crypto Special. Despite the name, it is Bitcoin only focused, and that's going to be focused on Michigan lawmakers and the Republican Party, trying to help them better understand Bitcoin. So if you want to meet people, if you want to make your voice heard to Michigan lawmakers, if you want to shoot some guns and talk about sovereign money, and you're in Michigan, highly encourage you to go to those things. But for most of you watching, you're not in Michigan, and we have to have the conversation digitally, unfortunately, right? In person is always better. But for those of you that aren't in Michigan, and we're having this conversation digitally right now, it's still possible to talk over the phone, with a video call, over text or email, whatever you want. Highly encourage you to reach out. If you need help with having a plan for how to convert your MicroStrategy shares into Bitcoin with an over-the-counter desk, getting the fastest transactions and ideally the best fees for you, right? If you want to have a profitability plan for maximizing the number of Bitcoin you're going to have in your personal Bitcoin treasury, right? Just like a company, you are your family, your intergenerational planning. You are the person in charge. Like, you are the Michael Saylor of your family. And so if you want to talk with somebody to help brainstorm different ideas to help you end up with more Bitcoin, happy to have the conversation to help you determine what's the best way to maximize your MicroStrategy shares or your Bitcoin stacking in general. Feel free to give me a call. And I think this is a really urgent problem. Let's say you have a net worth over 2.5 Bitcoin. This is urgent. Pretty soon, this MicroStrategy and this Bitcoin is going to appreciate to be worth over $1 million. If you got $250,000 worth of Bitcoin, 2.5 Bitcoin, that's going to be $1 million pretty soon. If you have 2.5 Bitcoin, you've probably not had $1 million before. And I'm telling you, if your whole life you've had if you've been living your whole life with a net worth of $10,000 and you suddenly come into 100 grand, you're probably going to make mistakes when it comes to 100 grand. Likewise, with $100,000, or in this case, $250,000, and you suddenly go to a net worth of $1 million, there are risks and problems and opportunities you're not even aware of yet. Or let's say you're 10 times larger than that. Let's say you have 25 Bitcoin. You're about to have a $10 million problem of, oh my gosh, how do I plan for this? How do I make sure my kids actually get my Bitcoin? How do I make sure that somebody doesn't sue me and try to take all my shares or take all my coins, right? How do I make sure that I'm not going to get hit with a massive big tax bill from the government? How do I make sure that I'm capitalizing on every opportunity and every financial product available to me to buy more Bitcoin, right? This is the beautiful, wonderful problem of being in Bitcoin, is that your net worth is probably going to double, triple, maybe even quadruple this year. And so it's really urgent. We have these conversations now because pretty soon things are going to get really, really, really busy really quickly. So if you want to text, feel free to text me if you prefer by the phone, or if you want to book a call, we can have a video call or phone call. The information is in the link in the description below. But even if you don't reach out to me, that's fine. Most of you won't, and I wish you all the best doing it on your own with doing everything right the first time with 100% success rate. But the big picture, no matter who you are, whether you're in Michigan, whether you're in Costa Rica, somewhere else in the world, the big picture is either 0 or 1. Michael Saylor is either an idiot or he's a genius. I think it's more likely Michael Saylor is a genius. He is doing exactly what I thought he would do at the exact moment that I thought he would do it. And if that continues to be the case, and if he has up his sleeve what I suspect he has, MicroStrategy is going really, really high, and probably sooner than later. And even $1,200, I think, is going to look really cheap in hindsight. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It really helps the algorithm and help Bitcoin-only content make it through the altcoin signal noise. And let's together pump Bitcoin and pump MicroStrategy and kill the altcoins. Thank you.